Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions on the thing. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? And today we're going to be talking all about Eternals. In the Why Did We Pick It section, I picked this movie because Cameron was very eager to watch it when all of us were hanging out together at Disneyland last week. We never got around to it, but it seemed like a fitting pick for this week's D Plus once we were all back. So, Cam, is there any reason in particular that you were like really clamoring to get on this one? Was it just because it was now on Disney Plus?
Yeah, it was a combination of it was now on Disney Plus, and also that I've paid technically to see this movie twice,
That's right.
and due to a like bike relay, I was denied my opportunity to see it despite paying for it twice at different times. Um, yeah, that's a story I think I've told on the That Nerdy Site podcast around Thanksgiving time. But yeah, no, it's like but also like I've been super curious about this movie. Eternals is definitely, in my opinion, like the biggest like risk as far as a Marvel property goes that you could possibly do.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where like they're not that popular of comic books even. Even something like Guardians of the Galaxy has had long time niche fans. Uh, but like to the flip side of that, you get a situation like the Eternals, and it's like I'm really curious of how they were going to do it, and we got it, and I was like, wow, I want to check this out, and I thought, hey, no better way to watch this than like watching it. Just came to Disney Plus, let's watch it while we're at Disneyland, and like that never happened because most of the time like we were up for maybe an hour ish before we went to bed every night
Mm-hmm.
because I'm an old ass out of shape man, and the right like we were not young people going to Disneyland and doing this. We were like all of us were in bed by like 11 p.m.
Yeah,
and like
I mean, I feel like we were up later than that, but it was definitely like we came back from the park and just kind of unwind like on our phones or chatting about the day and stuff rather than like let's sit down and like watch this on the also admittedly very tiny screen in the hotel room. It's just kind of like, yeah, let's not worry about trying to figure that out.
and that's totally fair. Yeah, no, I just really thought, hey, this movie just came out. I want to check it out. I'll check it out with my friends. You guys are like, yeah, that sounds like an interesting idea, and like we never got around to it, and like it's cool.
Yeah.
I did not but then you're like, hey, let's make a Disney Plus show this week, and I was like, sounds great.
Yeah.
And then I forgot about it up until last night, and I'm like, well, okay then.
Yeah.
And I watched it. So
I admittedly I've sat down and watched it last night too, and I was like, like the day got away from me, so I was very much up later than I anticipated being to watch it. I did actually see this one in theaters, um, and it was very interesting because I was like, a lot of times I'll go and see like a Marvel movie like a couple times in theaters, just because that's the kind of nerd I am, and I was trying to think if I'd actually done that for this one, and it was tricky because I remembered parts of this movie so vividly that I was like, "Oh, I must have seen that like multiple times." But like going back through my purchase history, I'm like, "No, I only saw it the one time." I think part of that is it is a whole bunch of new characters that I didn't really have any kind of connection to, so I wasn't like super eager to hop back in and check it out again in theaters, especially like with COVID picking back up and all that stuff. Um, and so yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, I only sat down and watched this one the one time in theaters. And yeah, I mean to your point of like it's a risk. I think like we're getting to that part or that point in Marvel here in Phase 4 where like they're doing a lot of those kinds of things, like Moon Knight being the next thing on TV that they kind of just dropped. It's like that's another one that's like super obscure. I don't know really anything about that character. uh,
Moon Knight is weird. Like the fact is that people are like, man, I would really hope they do a Moon Knight. People don't want like half of the fans of Moon Knight are wanting this because it's just a morbid curiosity.
mhm.
Because Moon Knight as a character dances in this gray area, like lies in this gray area of either being extremely problematic or like bonkers, weird, cool. Um, I'm sorry, bonkers weird, which I think is cool. Uh, and the reason why is because like if it's played straight and he is crazy, it is insanely problematic for the like for people advocating for mental health wellness and like the normalization of mental health issues. It's like, and I'm talking about the comics. I have not seen the show. I could not tell you one way or the other what way they're going to go with that. But like, it's definitely like it has a history of because this is a person who either is imbued with like mystic powers from an ancient Egyptian god that are driving him insane, or he was already insane and he's kind of like developed this Egyptian god as kind of like an additional psyche attached to his multiple personalities. And it plays into like this idea of like psychosis and a bunch of other stuff that they play fast and loose with in the comic books. And like in a modern day with a modern mental health like awareness going on is extraordinarily problematic. And so I was kind of shocked that they decided to go with it. But when I heard like the people behind it, I'm like, cool, I'm down with it. I think that this could be really cool. I thought the trailer for it was outstanding. I'm super stoked because I think they are really going to balance that gray area super well. I think Oscar Isaac is a perfect actor to do it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see how that one plays out. I
This
don't.
is basically Marvel's Batman, but they play it pretty straight about Batman being like their Batman being unhinged.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's. I mean, like I caught a quick kind of like here's an intro to Moon Knight, and talking about his dissociative personality disorder kind of stuff, and it'd be
mhm.
interesting, yeah, to see how deep they go into those elements, and how that translates to the small slash big screen ish things. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a couple months' time. It's coming out in March, so yeah, we'll talk about that either in March or April. But until then, we've got Eternals here to talk about. So a little bit of the history of Eternals. This was originally released November 5th, 2021. Other releases of the time. I mostly got to keep this basically copied from the doc that you and I did a couple weeks ago on Encanto, but I added a couple things. For example, No Time to Die came out October 8th. Shout out to That Bond Show that you can go catch on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thatnerdysite every Saturday. We had Dune came out, speaking of Oscar Isaac, on October 20th. And then we get into Red Notice came out November 5th alongside Eternals here. Tick Tick Boom came out November 10th. Shout out to Andrew Garfield. Ghostbusters Afterlife came out November 19th alongside King Richard. Encanto came out November 24th alongside House of Gucci, and Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. And then in December you had like Spider-Man No Way Home kind of blowing up the box office.
Yep.
In the runtime of things, this is 2 hours and 37 minutes, which I believe one of the trivia things I have later is it makes it the second longest Marvel film behind only Endgame. In the MCU timeline, we had Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings came out in September. What If was running from August to October. Then we had Eternals here in November. Spider-Man No Way Home in December alongside Hawkeye in November through December. Moon Knight, as we just touched on, is coming out March 30th through April and or May, depending on how long that series is running for. And then Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, another weird bonkers one that we'll see coming out May 6th there. The roll call. Who's who in the film? Director Chloe Zhao. Previously, before this, had done a few shorts and then leading into her feature film work, Songs My Brothers Taught Me, The Rider, and her Oscar-winning direction for Nomadland. The writers, we had Chloe Zhao, also working on the screenplay of this, working on all those same projects I previously mentioned. We also had Patrick Burleigh working on the screenplay, who prior to or like almost in conjunction around the same time also did the screenplay for Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway. And then in the future, he has a couple projects listed on his IMDb that I'm curious about. One being Black Knight, and the other being Power Rangers, presumably another Power Rangers reboot. And the Black Knight one I'm curious about because obviously one of the characters in this is the Black Knight in Marvel Comics, but given that the project that is linked to on IMDb is listed as like a Sony Pictures property, I think it's maybe just a weird coincidence, or maybe it's just IMDb is wrong. I don't know, but we'll see what that ends up turning into. Ryan Firpo worked on the screenplay as well as is also credited for screen story. Worked on a handful of shorts between 2007 and 2016 prior to this, and then is also is the writer of an upcoming film in production called Ruin, alongside his cousin Kaz Firpo, which I had to double check because I was like, well, it's a rare enough name that they're probably related somehow, and sure enough, they are cousins. Also worked on the screenplay and screen story of this. Worked on a wildly different handful of shorts, so they're both like in screenwriting stuff, but working on their own projects until basically they've converged here for Eternals, and then also Ruin, which I believe in the trivia I was seeing was on like the Blacklist in like 2017. The Blacklist famously being like the hottest scripts in Hollywood that haven't been picked up and made yet. So apparently it did get picked up at some point and is in development. On the starring side of things, we have a big old cast here of Eternals. We have Gemma Chan playing Cersei. She was previously in Doctor Who, The Waters of Mars episode. Always love giving a little bit of love to Doctor Who actors making their MCU appearances. She's also in Crazy Rich Asians. She also played a different character in the MCU in Captain Marvel. And she was in Raya and the Last Dragon last year as well. Richard Madden playing Icarus, of course, from Game of Thrones. He was also in the live-action Cinderella film, Rocket Man, and 1917. Angelina Jolie as Thena, in Girl Interrupted, Gone in 60 Seconds, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, Maleficent, a number of other projects, of course. It's Angelina Jolie. Selma Hayek as Ajak, another one with a very long resume, but I pulled out Desperado, Dogma, and Frida as a few of her highlights. Kit Harington as Dane Whitman, also, of course, from Game of Thrones, as well as Pompeii and How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World. Kumail Nanjiani as Kingo. Shout out to his couple of episodes of Community where he played Custodian Lapari. He also, of course, wrote and starred in The Big Sick. He was in Stuber. He was also in Men in Black International. Wonderful comic outside of all those things. And he is also slated in the upcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi series for Disney+.
He is?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's rad. Okay, cool.
He's going to be in that. And I believe in like somebody was doing an interview and talking about him, and I think they said something to the effect of like, oh yeah, Kumail's out there doing lightsaber stuff and it's really cool. And it was one of those things.
Wait,
like,
what?
I don't think people were supposed to announce that he's in there doing lightsaber stuff. But yeah, we'll see. He's definitely confirmed for Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we'll see.
See, when I heard that, I thought
capacity.
I thought he would be doing like an alien role. Because that's like it, like he did it like even though Men in Black 3 was like, or not Men in Black 3, Men in Black International was like hot dog slop. His alien work, like his voicing of an alien was like super good.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought he would they probably shoe him in for like that, or maybe even some droid work.
Maybe.
But it sounds cool. Like honestly, I love him. Kumail is somebody who has I've been a fan of what he does comedy wise for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He and his wife ran The
Indoor Kids.
The Indoor Kids. Yeah, I was about to bring that up. The Indoor Kids podcast that was part of the OG Nerdist slate. That I used to like. That was what kind of was my first post G4 entry into my entry into the independent world of podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
Was the Nerdist podcast, but I really found myself gravitating towards the Indoor Kids because they're super, the two of them are super relatable, him and his wife. They're great.
Yeah.
And I am really stoked to see him getting success just makes me happy because he's the kind of person who, from what the way other people talk about him, the way that his friendships work and the way that he composes himself, it's he's just a really cool guy. And if anything came out about him, I would be devastated, horribly devastated.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think he's also a great representation out there, representing people of Pakistani descent and like really representing Southeast Asia, as it were, with what he's been doing recently.
Mhm.
Particularly his portrayal in this film. So,
Yep.
love it.
We also have Leah McHugh here as Sprite. She was previously in the American Woman series, as well as projects The Lodge and Songbird. Brian Tyree Henry as Phastos, of course, from Atlanta, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and Godzilla vs. Kong from last year. Lauren Ridloff playing Makari has had a long-running stint on The Walking Dead. She was also in the Sound of Metal film last year, 2 years ago now. And Barry Keoghan playing Droog, previously from Dunkirk. He was also in The Green Knight last year, and he will be in the upcoming Matt Reeves' The Batman.
Who's he in The Batman?
I don't remember.
Just some role.
Yeah, I think he's like one of the one of like the police. I think.
Cool.
There's all like. Shockingly, there's like fan art out there I saw of him as like he's playing Officer Stanley Merkel, but I've seen fan art of him like maybe it's a ruse and maybe he's the Riddler and Paul Dano's another character or something. Yeah, I don't know, but
cool.
Who knows? But yes, he is Officer Stanley Merkel. Is what IMDb has him listed as, at least.
This is the first thing I've ever seen him in. I was blown away by his portrayal, like what he did in this. Like really, really great actor.
Mm-hmm.
Love his fat, thick accent that he had just laid down on in this film. It was great.
Madon Sok, or Don Lee, is in here as Gilgamesh, previously from Train to Busan, Derailed, The Bros, and The Outlaws. Shout out to him. Harish Patel as Karoon, previously in projects Run Fat Boy Run, Today's Special, Coronation Street, and the Four Weddings and a Funeral series. He's also a prolific Bollywood actor, but those were a handful of his projects that came up. Bill Skarsgård out there as Crow, and if you're like, who the heck's Crow? It's basically the main deviant that actually talks. That's apparently the deviant's name. Bill Skarsgård, of course, played Pennywise in It and It Chapter 2. He also, I believe, is Zeitgeist in Deadpool. One of those, like, the group of people that just gets like immediately killed off.
Yep.
In that one.
So good. Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah.
I'm just remembering that entire scene is so good.
Yeah.
No, I really loved like Bill Skarsgård. Like what a great role for him just to come in, maybe do a day's work of motion capture and like call it a day and be like, hey, I was in a Marvel movie.
Yeah, there you go.
Like good for him. Bill Skarsgård's like living that Skarsgård dream of like being on that like that undercurrent of like what's going on in Hollywood.
A handful of other little more cameo-esque probably appearances. David Kay is the voice of Arishem in this, also known to gamers for many years as the voice of Clank in the Ratchet and Clank series. He's prolific.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Prolific. I originally did not have him pulled in there, but I was like, oh, like when we get to the scene of Cersei like having the whole exposition dump from Arishem, I was like, oh, I should look up who this guy is and plug him in there. And when I saw it was Clank, I was like, oh, well, I'm definitely including that.
There you go.
He's a prolific voice actor, including many projects in the Transformers universe, where he's been playing Megatron in stuff like Beast Wars and a handful of other Transformers projects. He was also, I believe, Apocalypse in X-Men Evolution, that series. He's been in
that series friggin' slapped, man.
I love that
series. And Apocalypse was rad in that show.
Yeah. He's been in the Ben 10 Omniverse as well as the show Avengers Assemble. He was the newsreel person in the movie Up. And then he was also in he was Duckworth, I think, in DuckTales, in the reboot of DuckTales. Nice. And he is also, if you are a fan of John Oliver, he is the announcer for Last Week Tonight. So if you ever hear the like, and now this, those kinds of things, that is David Kay as well. That was probably the most fun one for me to see, because I'm like, oh, I've definitely heard this guy's voice all the time when I watched Last Week Tonight. We of course have Harry Styles there as Eros in the mid credits sequence. Another actor from Dunkirk, but he's also of course done all of that One Direction stuff and that his solo stuff as Harry Styles. Presumably a big deal. I couldn't tell you any One Direction songs or anything, but that's
Uh,
just me.
I know One Direction is extremely popular with people outside of our demographic. However, I do want to state that his solo work is like it slaps hard.
Oh, I don't
Like,
doubt any of that. It's just
yeah, no,
like
his solo
I'm
work is like
past the
above
era
and
of
beyond.
boy bandery kind of stuff, so I'm just like I don't know. Like I'm sure I would know it if I heard it on the radio or something, but I don't associate names to any of that stuff.
He is clearly like the Justin Timberlake of his group. And he's a standout great, like really cool dude. Um uh Watermelon Sugar is one that he put out. He's put out a couple of them. They're on my Spotify like daily drive rotation list, just because like they're just such groove songs. Really into like kind of like that 60s 70s like not psychedelic, but that 60s 70s kind of like groove pop to it. He's great.
Cool.
Also was super surprised with how like him in this, because I was like, oh, what the heck, Harry Styles is in this, what?
Yeah.
Because I saw him in the credit when I googled it, and it's like weird, okay, and it never showed up. I was like, I wonder what's going on with that, and then he pops up at the end. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yep.
um
Tease for
yeah.
Eternals 2 or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Alongside him, of course, we have the voice of Patton Oswalt as Pip the Troll.
It was him.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Patton Oswalt, of course, another prolific comic out there, the likes of Kumail Nanjiani. He was also he was Remy in Ratatouille. He is no stranger to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as many brothers of the Agent Koenig family in Agents of Shield. And then he is also the voice of MODOK in Marvel's MODOK, the kind of stop motion animation comedy series.
It's exclusive to Hulu, which is why I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I've not watched it either, but I've heard funny things. And then lastly, we have an off-screen voice of Mahershala Ali as
Knew
Blade.
it. I knew it.
There, of course, in the post-credit sequence, talking to Jon Snow / Dane Whitman. Mahershala Ali, of course, from House of Cards, Cottonmouth in Luke Cage. So again, another non-stranger to the MCU. He was in Moonlight and Green Book. He was also Aaron Davis in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And then he also was in last year's animated Invincible as Titan.
Yep.
So shout out to him. And then he will, yes, of course, eventually be in a standalone Blade film. Whenever that ends up coming around.
Just so cool. Mahershala Ali getting another shot at Marvel. While he was already like stand out as Cottonmouth in Luke Cage, like getting another shot. Yeah, like I love it. These top tier caliber actors are getting another shot after kind of the Marvel Netflix like break.
I mean, that was
with Disney Plus. So.
That was the biggest thing with like even in Luke Cage the show, everybody was like, Cottonmouth was such a great character, and spoilers for that show, killed off halfway through that season or whatever,
like 2/3 of the way through. Yeah,
I mean, like early enough in that he's not the big bad of like, he's very much set up as the big bad, but is not the big bad.
Oh, you're right.
Luke
No, because
Cage.
it's doesn't his aunt throw him off the, or does he throw his aunt off the balcony?
I believe, I don't remember how he goes out. I just remember that he definitely goes out and is not like, and it was kind of the like, why would you get rid of that? He's like the best thing in this show. But yeah, it is of course good to see that he will get another crack at some Marvel stuff.
Especially since he's perfect for Blade.
Yeah. Some trivia. Kingo and Sprite discuss Peter Pan in there. In the comics, Sprite is mentioned as having met J.M. Barrie, aka the author of Peter Pan, and is allegedly a direct inspiration for the Peter Pan character. So that's a fun little kind of like closing the loop. Despite this film being a Marvel movie, two DC characters are heavily mentioned. When Cersei and
Yep.
Icarus meet Kingo and his assistant Karun on the Bollywood film set, Gilgamesh eventually jokes that Karun is like Alfred, as Batman's butler. And Cersei and Icarus visit Phastos and his family in Chicago. Phastos' son, Jack, incorrectly calls Icarus Superman. So this is basically the the first MCU movie where its counterpart DC is very openly mentioned. I think a couple others have like teased the idea of like kryptonite as like, a weakness kind of thing. So it's kind of been like
Mhm.
a thing that DC exists in this world, but yeah, just kind of like
Well,
fun.
it
Just they're just kind of blatantly like talking about Batman and Superman.
I think that's great though because it's just like we're not afraid to just like they're never going to be characters in it because we're referencing them as media points.
Yeah, exactly.
And like to be fair, they are referencing two of the most ubiquitous superheroes of all time as like reference points. So it makes total sense. Like it's like, yeah, it totally fits. I mentioned like, oh, you're like Alfred. Everybody immediately knows who that is, like what it's referencing. You're like Superman. You shoot lasers out of your eyes and you wear it like you fly around with a cape. And he makes a point to mention like, I don't
I don't
wear
wear
a
a
cape.
cape. Yeah. Mhm.
Like
Um,
factual correction from Icarus there. Thanks,
yeah.
Icarus.
Yeah. Makari, portrayed by deaf actress Lauren Ridliff, is the first MCU deaf superhero. She was followed pretty quickly by Echo in the Hawkeye series as the second. This is the 26th film in the MCU and the first MCU film where no previous MCU characters appear in person, save, of course, Iron Man, in which no previous MCU characters appear.
True.
And that's another thing I think that like definitely I remember thinking a lot about after watching this the first time. I was like, it's so wild that this exists in the MCU but has like no other ties to like apart from like a couple mentions of like, oh, they brought everybody back from the blip or whatever. Like
Are you a wizard?
yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's such a
Like
good
yeah,
moment.
like Doctor Strange, yeah. Like a couple name checks in there, but otherwise like this I mean like even Shang-Chi has kind of like, cameos and stuff from like Wong and Captain Marvel and stuff at the end, but yeah, this was very much like a its own kind of beast, really kind of kicking off a new, part of the universe, kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy did at the time, where
Mhm.
like that was probably the one of the the last times we've seen that kind of vibe.
I think that it's I like that a lot about it, but I also like that when they reference things that happened in the universe, the blip, the like all of that is referenced. It does such a great way of like being like people know, right? Like this isn't some secret society stuff hidden behind the scenes anymore. It's like they are fulfilling kind of that promise of at the end of the original Iron Man, the I am Iron Man moment, right? Like where it's like we're not going to be doing this secret identity thing with Tony Stark and Iron Man. And so I think that this is a like as we keep saying this, and it just dawned on me when I was watching this last night that like that was a unintentionally or intentionally either way that was a promise being made to the like this Marvel universe is not going to be like atypical of what you get out of a superhero universe. People will know things, people will recognize things, and we see that bleed through just about every movie, whether it's like whether it's Avengers 1, everybody talking about like referencing New York as an event, not just a city. Um, there's so much that goes into it, really. And I love the idea that it's like, yeah, everybody had to deal with the blip. Either you came back from the blip and 5 years of your life are gone, or rather you've been missing for 5 years and like, but for you it was like yesterday versus somebody you love is gone for 5 years and you think they're gone forever for those 5 years. Like you had, there's so much about like like the craziness that was the blip and kind of like the reaction. It's like, well, people know who Doctor Strange is, obviously, because Kit Harington, Dane Whitman, who is a teacher at the Darwin Institute, is referencing Doctor Strange and as like asking his girlfriend if she is one of the secret wizards of the Doctor Strange like section of the universe. Like it's a whole thing, and I love that that actuality of it being kind of like this fulfillment of that promise, but also just being like a great thing that we're like, We don't have to like pussyfoot around this. We are being like, it is known, and it's great. I love it.
Yeah. Just to tie back to that the previous mention of no previous MCU characters, because I was thinking as I mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy, I was like, oh, like that one wouldn't have had previous characters in it, but then I realized, oh, the Collector was like previously introduced prior to Guardians of the Galaxy, so that's probably how that one skirted the issue there.
He
Um,
came in end
he
of
was yeah, he was
Thor
a post
Dark World
yeah, exactly.
post credits.
He was
Yeah.
the post credits for Thor Dark World where they give him the ether. Um,
Oh man, I just realized like I'm like, oh, I love they're mining a celestial's head. Like it's a thing. They're doing that, and it's like what like, and like we get to see like the whole like the celestial cosmology and like how they operate as a people and as a species,
mhm.
which is wildly cool. Like it's wildly cool because they never even really do this in the comic books. It's like this just does something on its own, and I love it.
Yeah. The Eternals have taken the identities of mythological beings across history. Notably, Athena, Icarus, Circe, Makari, and Phastos were believed to be the Greek gods Athena, Icarus, Circe, Mercury, and Hephaestus, though it should be mentioned Icarus was not, of course, a god, but a human from Greek mythology. In the Marvel comics, the Eternals got into a brief clash when the existing Greek gods over with the existing Greek gods over the identity mix-up. The film acknowledges a few of the mythological origins of the Eternals. Makari's speedster abilities refer to Mercury being the god of speed. Her having taken things and kept them in the Eternal ship is also a reference to Mercury being the god of thieves. Athena wears a golden suit and generally wields spears in combat. Athena, drop the A, is associated with the color gold, and one of her symbols is, of course, the spear. Phastos creates mechanical devices, and his namesake Hephaestus is the god of artisans, blacksmiths, metalworks, and engineers. At Balbalon, Gilgamesh fights a deviant that has the form of a bull. Gilgamesh's myth has him fight the bull of heaven. Sprite is named after Sprite, an ancient European water spirit that possesses great artistic talent. Sprite has on an aqua suit and displays great storytelling skills. Dane Whitman asks if Circe can turn him into a giraffe. Circe was a sorceress who turned people into animals. And Icarus flying into the sun as a form of suicide at the end is a tribute to the legend of Icarus, of course, who flew too close to the sun on his artificial limbs and damaged them, causing him to suffer a fatal fall. And then the last little piece of trivia I pulled in just because I was so bothered by the fact that 234 out of 88 people found this interesting. Toward the film's ending, Dane Whitman confesses his feelings for Circe by proclaiming, "I love you, Circe." This caused a considerable amount of amused reactions from film audiences who were familiar with the actor that was portraying Dane Whitman, Kit Harington, and his previous role in the television series Game of Thrones, which features a character named Circe, which bears the same pronunciation as Circe. So, people amused or confused by the fact that Kit Harington playing two different characters in two wildly different properties, but both of them have a Circe. And so I was just like, I hate that this is a trivia thing in here. And I hate that
fun.
so many
like
people
it.
I hate that so many people were like, yes, I do find this interesting that this actor played two characters.
For me, it's less that it's interesting. It's like, oh, that's fun. That's a fun note.
It's whatever. So that's the trivia. So Cam, this being your first time watching it, what did you think?
Man, this is so I've always been a fan of the weird and fantastical side of Marvel. I've always felt that DC was better about doing theirs and kind of like a more of a like there's no weirdness about the Justice League going and dealing with like some weird new gods of like stuff. Darkseid is like notoriously like one of the main villains of the Justice League, and he is in fact a part of like the new gods kind of like weird cosmic like circle of DC Universe property. So when they announced the Eternals, I was super weirded out because I was like, how in the world are you going to do this? Because like I mentioned earlier, the Eternals are, it's funny for somebody who has the smallest role in this film, Dane Whitman, like Kit Harington's Dane Whitman having the smallest role in this film, as far as like leads go, I guess, even though it's really more of an ensemble cast. His character has like more than just about any of the other Eternals put together. like as far as like backstory of like the Black Knight and what's going on with that. So like it's wild that they chose to go with this one first. Um, but it's really interesting to see them kind of delve into a like a non, because here's the thing, like in the Marvel Comics universe, the Greek gods are a thing, as you mentioned earlier in that trivia piece. It's a whole thing. The fact that they don't, that is not the case. Like they're like Asgard, and the Asgardians are part of this like part of the universal multi-dimensional spectrum of that. There's no mention of the Greek gods involved in that at all, and this kind of supplants that as the Eternals kind of like being the answer to that aspect of it that I really enjoy. So I'm a really big fan of the way that they decide to approach kind of like this cosmic side of things. It's definitely on the opposite end of things from Guardians of the Galaxy, in that this is like more big scope than small scope that we see with that one, with that property in general. I know I really liked it. It's weird, and it's like it's part of that weirdness of Marvel that I like. That's up my alley. I think that this had like really cool, significant kind of like small but also large consequences to it, and in regards to not as far as the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is concerned, but this is kind of a weird mystery that's going to pop up and can be referenced later on. This weird marble celestial that's like halfway out of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the idea of like the cosmic scale of celestials and kind of like the like this is part of the universe's natural life cycle. It's part of the ecosystem. And I've often said privately and like in conversations regarding the subject that humankind is weird because we've stepped outside of that natural cycle of nature. Like we are not just we are a weird species in that we stepped outside of our natural cycle of like predator prey existence in the kind of the cycle of nature in regards to the other, other creatures of this planet, and sidestepping that to the point where like we made our predator, the thing that preyed on us, our best friend with canines.
Mm-hmm.
Like convincing the ancient wolf to become basically our lapdogs is wild. It's weird. Humanity is weird, and I loved that the question was, does humanity deserve to be exempt from the cycle of the universe? Like, once again, bringing up like this idea of human exceptionalism. Like, is humanity special enough? Are we as a species special enough to justify the prevention of the natural order of the universe? And I think that it poses a really great moral question in a way that I think the trolley problem is like, it's like, what if you turned the trolley problem on its head and you made it about like much more than just people on a train track with the trolley heading towards them?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it did an amazing job of casting some really like great actors and actresses. I was not blown away. I was incredibly moved by Richard Madden's Icarus, and like some really interesting points where this is a character who is torn down the middle out of like what is expected of him, his duty, his purpose of existence, what he's known to be his purpose for existing, versus his attachment to his family and this planet and everything else. It's great. I love that aspect of his character. I love that like they don't have like, this is not a movie about like, we kind of got it set up being like the emergence in the trailers. They're like, the emergence is this thing, and they don't really tell us what it is in the trailers. And it sounds like this bad cataclysmic thing that the Eternals are there to stop. And then they just like really turn it on its head. This isn't a movie about good guys versus bad guys. This isn't a movie about, the Eternals versus the I almost called them the detriments, but they're the
Deviants.
Deviants, yeah. It's not about that. This is about like a much bigger question than that. And it's about kind of like our purpose and like, do we get to define our purpose? Do we get to change things? I think it delves into that like some really deep questions that like once again, I want to head back to circle around and back and say this was incredibly risky. Like, my fear about this movie was they were going to play it like super straight and not deal into kind of a more cosmic side of things, the kind of weirdness that the Eternals are representative of from the comics. Even though they themselves aren't, like, I would not consider the best example of this. Um, like, I still really, really enjoyed this film. Like, it has some rough spots, it has some rough places, but overall, I think it's a pretty, like, for what it tries to do and what it attempts to do, I think it's pretty stellar for it. Even though it sometimes doesn't, like, it doesn't make that leap. Sorry, it doesn't successfully make it to the other side of some of its leaps. So, yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like, effectively taking humanity out of it, there's like kind of the three factions of there's the Celestials that are like pure, like, this is the order of the universe. This is kind of our order of the universe. We've kind of created both the Deviants and the Eternals
Eternals.
to kind of like course correct so that we can kind of keep this cycle of things going on. So they're basically so far removed from anything that they have no real personal stakes in any of that. Then you like
Well,
the
let me put it this way, Trevor. When you are thinking about how you want to, like, irrigate your yard and whether you want to put down sprinklers, etc., what you want to figure out how to do with that, do you think about the ants that are living in your
right,
yard?
right.
Like,
Um,
like, that is a real like, I feel like real heavy perspective
yeah,
right
yeah.
on.
I mean, they
So
are, ostensibly gods of this world kind of thing, and obviously, there are also gods in this world, so whatever. Um, but then at kind of the other end of the spectrum, you have the deviants that are basically pure primal, and
mhm.
kind of do like they are and like they were designed to be the apex predator of their respective worlds, and then they got too good at their jobs as they evolved, and killed off the people that the Celestials needed, to do the emergence and all that stuff. So the solution was the Eternals that could just kind of go, be inserted, fight the deviants, do their job, set up the worlds for the emergence, and then do it all over again, time immemorium. And the idea being here that humanity has rubbed off on the Eternals, and kind of helped the Eternals evolve their way of thinking, and embrace kind of those human elements and the flaws. I mean, it ultimately ends up being like a almost much more of a like philosophical kind of storytelling option that is almost like oddly at odds with them just like beating up CGI things, as they do, as are wont
Yeah.
to do in a Marvel movie. And that's often where I think some of the most amusing and interesting elements for me are seeing how humanity has rubbed off on these otherwise like very automaton kind of characters, seeing how how some of them have paired up. Thena and Gilgamesh are like a great couple that obviously we don't get to spend a lot of time with, but in the little bit we see with them, they've clearly built a bond. Makari
What's
and Druig, like having
mm,
their little romance, obviously Cersei and Icarus, of course, and Sprite also kind of having that pining after Icarus, who will never give her another look because of her her stature and how she was designed. um
and also standing next to Cersei, like,
yeah.
yeah.
um I love seeing like those little human moments from these obviously very non-human characters. There's so much joy and beauty in a lot of those sequences, in how they've kind of created themselves as companions. Even going back and seeing kind of Ajak over time,
Mhm.
like falling in love with humanity so much that she's the first one that's really willing to kind of break away from the emergence. And obviously that ends up leading to her downfall, as Icarus can't cope with that, can't
Well,
he he
it's
he can't,
yeah.
like, he is too devoted to the mission of the Celestials at that point, um to
Well,
see
it's
any other
interesting.
way out.
Well, when he reveals that he was like, she told him after Babylon, that
Mhm.
means in all the time that everybody else was like getting lost in humanity and finding love in them lost, like this whole cycle of things, Icarus wasn't able to because he
He knew
knew.
they were a means to an end. Yeah.
Yeah, he knew these aren't people that we can see as equals or a part of our lives. They are fuel for the engine. Like, and so it makes total sense. Like, and eventually, like, and when you look at like the time frame, time wise, it's like, oh, they broke up a century ago. Well, what was happening a century ago? Oh, it was just after World War One. Like it's a very tumultuous time, especially for like Europe. If that like because he left her in England. I mean, it's clear that he's been keeping tabs on her because he brings it up in that scene with Ajax. Uh, but it's like he was he. It's so great because, like I mentioned earlier, he is a character torn in half because he never got the opportunity to see humanity in anything other than their purpose according to the Celestials' plans, and
With I
it
would argue
yeah.
with the brief except like right before all of that, right before Ajax reveals it, like
Oh, he does, yeah.
he does start seeing the hope of humanity because he's seeing them through Cersei's eyes in
Mhm.
his, desire to be close to Cersei. So like,
When
you
he
know,
picks up their language and she goes, "I can't believe you're learning their language." Like it's clear before he gets told the truth, he is in that cycle with the rest of them, but we don't get to see him until if you look back and you think of him during the Aztec part,
mhm,
he's so disinterested in anything other than the deviants
yeah.
that it's like it's brutal. And like I went back and I rewatched a couple of scenes this morning because I couldn't get some of the stuff out of my head. I'm like, where are the like hint points? Because I knew and this is a problem with trailers, people.
Mhm.
There's an entire scene in the trailers that they play out, and it's like it looks like it's a starting point for the film. And by the time they get to where you think that point is, it's revealed, oh no, that's not it at all. So you know
Yeah.
that scene is either cut or it's coming up somewhere else.
Yeah, no,
And
I had the
yeah,
exact same thing, like the exact same thought when I was watching it in the theaters, where I'm like, okay, well, they're clearly playing with time with the flashbacks, and I've seen this entire scene between Richard Madden and Selma Hayek in the trailer, so he clearly knew about the emergence before he went to London and saved Cersei or whatever. So like, it's only a matter of time before we go back and see that flashback, and so yeah, like it
yeah.
was very much a like the movie has enough kind of like slow lull points where I was actively thinking about
Mhm.
that as I was watching it the first time. Um, which is, yeah, it's I mean, like I at the same point, I get that they needed kind of a like we need to be able to tell you concisely what the big picture of this movie is going to be because otherwise you're just not going to show up. So like
Yeah.
I get why it needed to be in there, but yeah, because it was in there and I knew that that scene was coming, I knew, where some loyalties lie and where characters knew more than they were letting on.
It made small red flags very very apparent by the time like that moment like they come across her body happens. I will say, however, the way they handle that entire breakdown, like when they're on the cliff and Selma Hayek is just so subtly great in this movie. Like I love her so much because she's immediately believable because she just has that natural talent as an actress. And she is just there. And in that moment when they're on the cliff and she looks over and she goes, "Oh," and he explains, "Yeah, they've already killed the oil workers." Like so just like everybody else when they talk about loss of life in this through this movie, you hear like emotion behind it, and he's so by the numbers about it. Like I've been observing them, like figuring out what to do about them, and that's why I came to you. And then for her to be like, what are you doing? And he goes, "I'm not gonna let you. Like you can't just say no to the plan that we've been here for for 7,000 years. You don't get to just say no now." And for her to realize like her greatest mistake was telling him and preventing him from being a part of this world. And it's once again, it's a wonderful parallel to like Icarus, like up in the sky above, like playing too close to the idea of being a god and not like the whole like symbolic nature of that playing into this character and doing such a wonderful job of it. And I love that it's just like a like when she like it's not a "I can't believe you're doing this to me." It's not a like "Oh my gosh, like don't do this." It's she knows what's going to happen. And instead of like reacting like you'd expect somebody to act, she is just so full of compassion and love. She hugs him and apologizes and tells him, "I'm so sorry, I've led you down the wrong path." And he tells her it's the only path like I ever had. And it's very clear that it's this like really great moment. Like I'm like, okay, you guys got like two like really incredible caliber of actors for this scene that's in a Marvel movie about the cosmic weird, like about characters from the cosmic weird side of it, and it's like freaking Shakespearean. And when he shoves her off, and it's like, and it like you can just see it breaking him apart to watch her die, and like, and he scoops up her body, and he's just like so torn. And I love that he lets Cersei claim the orb and be chosen to be the next person. He could have like, I'm sure he could have done something about it, but he doesn't. He lets Cersei be the one to guide them through it.
I don't think. I
And
mean, I don't
yeah.
think he had any. I don't think he knew that that was going to happen. I don't think he
Oh,
knew that
sure.
that was a thing that could happen. I
That's
think that
fair.
was that was a like whatever that power in Ajax was. Obviously, didn't see him fit to carry on the mission. And so, like, yeah, if they hadn't gone back to see Ajax, his plan probably would have worked and flawlessly, and the emergence would have happened, and nobody would have none the wiser. But like, it found her and was able to kind of
Yeah.
execute this like saving grace plan in the nick of time. Um, so yeah.
And also, yeah, and I will say, like, I love that, like, like I said earlier, this isn't a movie about good guys and bad guys. This is a movie about a family dynamic that's in a very difficult position, and to the point where, like, I totally understand where Camille's character comes from when he says, like, I think Icarus is right. Like, we can't just say no to the thing that's been perpetually giving more and more life to the universe. And like he's like, and it's very clear he loves humanity. He loves human culture, but he is also knows like the cosmic purpose of it. But at the same time, he's not going to fight his family.
Yeah.
And I love that stance because it's not a stance of neutrality. He is making a decision that, like, he knows what the right is, but he also knows that he's not going to stand in anybody's way. He's not going to take the life of a family member, and he's not going to use his power to hurt his family. And I love that aspect of it. That it's like it is making a decision about confrontation and choosing to be non-confrontational rather than just being a like, this is not a decision a coward made. This is a decision that somebody who understands the implications of his choices made and stands by them and his convictions.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they did that and made that work in just a singular moment is what I think makes this movie great. What makes this movie not great is the CGI is like super bad at times. It has too many flashback scenes. If your flashback only has two characters in it, I don't know how important that flashback is when it could have just been mentioned elsewhere. Granted, that plays into the show me, don't tell me aspect of things.
I mean, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I would challenge which flashbacks in particular you
Hiroshima.
Okay. I mean, I think that gives enough of a sense of why Festos walked away from it and why he comes back into the story so late after having, like,
Mhm.
up to that point we had seen him so eager to give them the steam engine, and they're like, that's way too advanced, and so he gives them the plow instead. Like,
I call it the plow
and
because that's what it does.
I will say I saw, because I remember when the movie came out, there was like a lot of controversy around the idea of like the movie is blaming a black man for the
Oh,
nuclear dropping
that's
of
so
bombs or
full of
whatever.
it. That's not
And
the case.
it's absolutely not. And it's very much like, it's not that he created the atom bomb or anything like that. He is just very regretful for having been a cog in the wheel of giving them advancement and now seeing how destructive they are. And it also, I think, it even ties around to what he ultimately, like, why he so
Mhm.
quickly comes around and kind of maybe pieced everything together before, because he mentions like we weren't supposed to interfere in their conflicts because their conflicts lead to better life-saving technologies for them, and
Mhm.
ultimately add more fuel to the fire that we
Better
need. So
Yeah,
like
better weapons leads to more advanced techniques in saving lives, and then that is taken to a civilian population and prevents people from dying as early.
yeah.
100%. Yeah, no, he's also the character that nails and figures out immediately like how they were able to kind of do that the bond even though some of them didn't have bracelets.
Yeah. The
He goes,
Unimind, yeah.
yeah, he was like Unimind. He goes, well, it makes sense why we didn't need the Unimind for that because that's how we survive when a celestial merges. Is that we are connected to the celestial. We're not destroyed along with the planet. And it's like there you go. You had a weird like you. This could have been a weird Deus Ex Machina, and nope, it fits directly into the logic of what's going on,
Yeah.
which is what makes this film good. The problem is just going to be that one, it's 2.5 hours long. Um,
That's
like
I
it's
mean,
long.
I will
Yeah.
agree that the pacing of it, like, I don't
Mm,
disagree, or I'm kinda, if you could make a case for some of the flashbacks not needing to be in there, I'm certainly open to it. But I think for me, it's more that because we're experiencing this movie so out of order in
mhm.
in sequence, that a lot of times it just kind of it alters the pacing to a halt. It's very much like how we've been seeing in the Book of Boba Fett. You know, dipping between timelines can really kind of drag a storyline to a halt because we're now going in and filling gaps and stuff like that. And I think there's also an element there of, we knew how some of these pieces already slotted together because of trailers, or because we can just
Mhm.
kind of like
That's
put
true.
together some of the story beats. So I think it just kind of it accentuates that feeling a little bit. Um, I mean, yes, there is absolutely length to this movie, but it's I think it's deliberate in the story it's trying to tell, and the
Yeah.
and making sure that you have enough for all of these characters to kind of feel
Mhm.
for them, and understand the choices that they're making in those final, moments together as a family. Um, uh, and I don't know if you don't get some of those flashbacks, then you don't necessarily see what's driving them to pair off, or to kind of be with one another, or help so and so and not so and so. So I for me, it like it works, but I will agree that it kind of gets muddled because of just
Mhm.
trying to piece together everything in the order and whatnot. Like, it'd be very interesting to see like what a let's just watch this chronologically kind of thing would look like of this
Mhm.
movie. And if that would help the moment. I mean, obviously the momentum would be messed up that way
Oh,
too,
entirely.
because
Yeah.
because it wasn't designed to be done like that. But as I definitely think an element of that. But I mean, because really at the end of the day, you kind of need something that long to service an ensemble this big of brand new
Yeah.
characters that you don't get the benefits of previous MCU shorthand, because none of these characters have been in any of these other movies before. Like, in Infinity War and Endgame, like, you're able to really just kind of like, you know, clip along with a lot of those introductions or pairings or whatever, because we've seen that character in 3 other movies. We know exactly how they're going to behave when they meet this other character that we've seen in 2 movies, and now we can just kind of, like, play with them and let them go and quip, with one another. Here, we're having to introduce and really kind of set everyone apart, and that's just gonna take some time. It'd be almost interesting to see, like, what an Eternals series would have looked like,
Mhm.
instead of a movie. But I think for, the medium they went with, I think it works for me ultimately.
It
Um,
does for me as well. I think that I don't think Icarus's character would be like as favorable about his character if it was in a series. Because at some point in the length of an entire TV series, um torn and conflicted characters can easily become uh like can get into the area like into the realm of like scheming.
mhm,
Like if you don't get the payoff of the betrayal soon enough, it becomes much more nefarious that
yeah,
it's held back.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, if again, like, this is all purely hypothetical kind of stuff, but like the series that's in my mind, would be a series almost akin to, and we talked about this a little bit on our road trip, but almost akin to like that fourth season of Arrested Development, where
Mm.
because of circumstances around filming, everybody kind of gets their own episode that ultimately, yeah, they're little seeds that are kind of like building into the larger plot. But like that's kind of what I would envision something like this is you have your Makari episode, you have your Festus episode, and you're kind of like seeing each of them along their timeline, and maybe Icarus is kind of like coming in and out or something like that. And then like it ends with the Icarus episode where you really see his journey from start to finish, and now all the pieces are in place, and now we go into the ensembles all together to, face off against the emergence or whatever.
That could be cool. I think that would actually work super well then, because
yeah.
you get to see Icarus as being kind of like hey, it's kind of like a broy dude, a douchey dude, and then it turns out, oh no, he's actually the most conflicted character in the series. I can see that being like the way that they lay it out, how that could work.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. By the way, for people wondering why did we talk about Arrested Development season 4, we had a long road trip, and weirdly enough, we never played any music during.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We just talked the full 6+ hours drive there and back from Phoenix to Anaheim.
Go figure. Like if 4 of us in a car could talk for 6 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Like weird. A whole bunch of podcasters that talk for hours at end on per week anyway.
Yeah, no, but I think you're right on that, and I also think that this definitely could have worked as a series now that you kind of frame it that way for me. I can agree with that. I think that probably my biggest takeaway from it is that I think individually, as far as like scenes go, scenes where the characters are interacting with each other and actually like acting with each other, I think is definitely the highest points of this film. And I think the fact that there's so much of that is great. Deviants are okay as far as like monster designs go, but like, man, does it look more like Whedon-esque dark side, and like as far as like the CGI goes for some of them. It's just, it stands real out. And then there's also like very clear obvious points where it's like, this is CGI Richard Madden going through the air, not actual Richard Madden. Like outside of that, technical stuff about it is rough, but overall I think that this is just like a really cool character drama. And when it plays into that, as like that's to me that's its greatest strength. And when it plays into that, I think it's at its absolute best. I think it's some of like the best work we've seen. And I think it's the caliber of actors they got for this movie. I mean, this movie has Angelina Jolie in it for Pete's sake, and she does a great job of being this like sick, like a sick god. What does a sick god look like? And like she's in like desert therapy with Gilgamesh. Like Athena and Gilgamesh are out in the desert of Australia, like doing therapy and cooking and like baking and stuff. Like, are you like, how great is that? I love that aspect of it. Gilgamesh, I think, is probably going to be like an unsung favorite of mine for this movie. He's only in it for only a small chunk of the film, but he's so great. Like I love the actor from Train to Busan, but I also just think that he's just like Gilgamesh is just such an underrated character in this film overall. But I think overall, like everybody, I think stands out and shines. I did not think Druig was going to be very interesting because he's just like a mind control dude, but he ends up being like the most like philosophical and having the most conflict with the mission overall. And it's not because he's a manipulator or anything. It's because he really cares about the people.
Yeah.
Possibly more than any of them, to the point where he literally takes a group of conquistadors and Aztecs and leads them into the Amazon forest, and for 20 generations leads their people in like a peaceful coexistence of living. And it's like, it's so like that aspect of it is really cool, but it's also like has some weird cult vibes to it.
Oh yeah,
it's
definitely.
Like totally makes sense. Like he does control brains. He does do mind control. That's his power. And like, but then you get to see him take on deviants with shotguns and rifles. And like with his mind control, like everybody's in sync so they can act as one. That's cool.
I think I mean, as somebody who knew so little about these characters going in, I remember like right before the movie came out, there was kind of like a featurette that talked about how like, 5 of the Eternals are like really warrior types, and then 5 are more the thinker types. And I was thinking about that the second time as I was watching it, that even like the thinkers have moments to shine in combat, and they've found ways to make their ability work against the deviants, because yeah, if your sole mission is to destroy these, like, these aggressive creatures or whatever, why do you need thinkers? What's the point of that? But the fact
Mhm.
that like they can create weapons, or they can kind of like change the battlefield in their favor or something like that, I think is a testament to that kind of methodology of like, who do you need to win in this fight? Whoever the writer wants, and how do you make that
Mhm.
happen? That's the interesting part. One thing I wanted to ask
Oh,
you about.
I wanna give a quick shout out though to, Faustus when he, like, talking about a thinker, like, he's the real like, tinker thinker of the group, but he's the one that figures out how to keep Icarus bound.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
yeah, his
so
line of
good.
like, I've wanted to clip your wings for a long time.
Fine.
Like, he's definitely been thinking about that for
Yeah.
a few generations. Um,
And it's great. Also, shout out to him being like, first off, a gay couple of color, a gay couple of color who has a child. They've like this is a family unit, and also for that hot as fuck makeout scene on the porch, like, good, great. Like you've been wanting a gay like a gay kiss. It's not some throwaway moment at the end of Rise of Skywalker. Here you go, right folk like front and center. Hot, man. That was so good.
there you go. I want to kind of like pivoting in that direction a little bit, I guess. I wanted to ask you what you thought about the humor and the comedy of the movie, because I was
Loved
surprised,
it.
like, going back in and watching it again last night, like how funny moments of this are. Um,
When Kingo goes up, they're in his private jet, first off.
mhm.
And it's like, how did this guy get like I get he's a Bollywood star, and then you realize
He's a
he
Bollywood dynasty
yeah,
himself.
self. He's just on the phone. He goes, "What are you talking about? This is my great great grandfather, and this is my great grandfather, and this is my grandfather, and this is my father, and now it's me. I am a Bollywood dynasty."
Mhm.
Like, and then she like because Sprite's pissed off because he dished her in Morocco, and he's like, "I dished you because you guys want to relocate every 5 years, and screw that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing that." He's always it's like it's bad, like it's boring and it's sad, and he goes, and I'm like, he nails it. Like he's like, how do you figure out how do you like? I think they do a great job of touching on the idea of like how do you live forever, and like he does a great job. Oh my gosh, although his valet
Karun is great.
Karun is so good because he when they're talking and he goes, "Oh, we can talk." He's known me for 50 years. He's
Yeah.
like you can trust him implicitly.
Yeah, oh,
He
these are
goes,
my friends from college. It's so great to be around
to
the
be
the
around you,
wonderful Eternals.
Eternals.
Like, yeah, that like, oh, clearly Kingo has already like spilled the beans on
Well,
us.
he had to spill the beans, and he explains. He goes, "Well, he did when we first met. He thought I was a vampire, and he tried to stake me in the heart. I have apologized 1,000 times, and you're almost done enough."
Yeah, yeah.
Like Kingo is the perfect amount of arrogant and like big headedness meets like a really like just an opposite kind of view of how the rest of the Eternals have been living their lives. He and Druig are just on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And I love that about it. And I love Kingo as just as like Kingo's power is friggin' awesome.
Mhm.
He can just like do projectile blasts, but he does it with like cool handguns.
Yeah.
Like he
Or
goes like
or
pew pew pew.
I mean, I wonder how many times he was on set and like, because he also, gets
Oh
the
yeah,
energy ball and just Hadoukenned. I wonder how many times
he Hadoukens.
Kumail was just like
Yeah, how many
Hadouken.
times did he? How many times did he go Hadouken on set? And they're like, Kumail, you can't say Hadouken.
I feel like
And he goes, fine, fine, fine.
I feel like
And
he could have at least gotten one in there.
well, there's one that he straight up did a Kamehameha wave.
Yeah.
Like he straight up did the Kamehameha wave pose. Like 100%. I rewound it at, like by the 10 seconds, and I was like, did he just do a Kamehameha? It's like this guy really just. They're like, yeah, go ahead and do the charge. And he goes, okay, cool. And he does the full on Kamehameha, and it's like so good. Like Kumail was clearly having the time of his life on this film, and I think that's really the thing that I take away. A lot of it is everybody was just having the time of their life on this film, on this set. They were enjoying what they were doing. They were having a great time. I think the cast is all just like felt like had a really great vibe to them. because even when they're supposed to be at each other's throats, I never for a second thought they stopped caring about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's the actors coming through on that, whether it's just like that's the way that they were trying to portray it, or edit it, or whatever they tried to do with that. But I think that because even when he says, I've been waiting to clip your wings for a while, like that has such a little brother's here to dunk on big brother vibe to it.
Yeah, I mean, like, half an hour earlier, we saw him destroy the guy's table. So it's like,
oh my gosh, what is if I brain him? Like that's in the trailers, but it's done even better in the movie.
It's in the trailer, yeah, and they did a thing in there, which they did again in Spider-Man No Way Home, I think, where they knew that like we were going to see that over and over and over in the trailers, so they had like a little beat extra that they kind of hid away. So like, yeah, IKEA fall catalog ass. Like we didn't get the ass in the trailer, so that like that hits a little bit more, as well as the idea that right before that sequence happens, he's I-beamed the door or whatever, and Festus has created like an impenetrable safe house. So it's a payoff to a joke that we didn't see in the trailer. And then there's like a little coda that we also didn't see. It's basically the middle bit of a 3-part joke that I think helps make moments like that we are going to see over and over and over again.
Faustus does such a dramatic moment of, now I fixed my son's bicycle with my hands. And Icarus is like, oh really? Okay, then laser beam eyes to the window, to the sliding glass door. And like, you just see like the intricate markings from the Eternal stuff. And he goes, oh yeah. Don't use your things anymore, huh? And then it's like, okay, now Icarus has the up, and then Icarus does the table smash. And then Faustus just gets to basically be like, you ass. Like, of course you broke my table, you asshole. My asshole big brother decided to show up with my sister / his like ex-wife and like butt into my life. And by the way, the code that everybody had was my friends from college.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Even in even in Spanish, like amigos de la universidad. Was a great great little bit.
Because it's like, is that their cover story? Yeah, it's a cover story, but everybody they say it to immediately knows that it's code for the Eternals.
Yeah,
it's great.
I mean, because like we're really, I mean, apart from the the village people that Druig's kind of got, under his control, like everybody else, they're telling it is like, they're saying it as kind of a test of like, I don't know if I can speak openly to this person, so we're going to kind of speak in code until we get the all clear, and we just mostly see it happen among people that like have already opened up entirely to their people.
Also, shout out to
the people they love.
Yeah. And shout out to the Shadow Warrior, like as there's like this, like it's like what's his name, like quotes a random dramatic line. He goes, "That's your favorite line from Shadow Warrior 2, Adrift in Time," or whatever. And it's just like, oh my god, so good.
You must fight for your family or whatever it is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, when he points out, he goes, when Kingo points out, he goes, "Oh, by the way, yeah, you like this? You like what you're seeing here? It's about Icarus. It's about you." And it's like,
I'm
it's actually
you.
About you.
Yeah. I can't fly.
We're going to do some wire work because obviously, perfect. It's so good. I love it. Oh my
I love
gosh.
how Kingo how many cameras Kingo has later on.
Oh my gosh.
And just how that ends up being like such a fun little runner.
Documentary wise, sit down, Cersei. Tell him about yourself. Okay, well, I can turn rocks into water. I can turn dirt into water. I can, and it's just like we'll come back to it. It's fine. Yeah. Like such great comedic beats, and it's not just them. Sprite gets a bunch of them. What sounds like it's going to be a joke ends up being like a really like heartfelt moment where Kingo like acknowledges to Sprite, "Yeah, I've known forever that you're in love with Icarus, but it's like, and I know that you can't be with him, and that's okay. Like we like I'm here for you," kind of like as a brotherly moment. And like it's like, oh, I totally expected that to turn into like some like asshole comment, but it's not. It's super heartfelt.
Yeah.
and like wonderful. And then immediately afterwards, he does the cool like flipping under the deviant to shoot its head off with his finger guns, which there's so many action moments that like the actual like actors doing or like stunt doubles doing the action moments are cool. It just makes the CGI even worse, like the CGI fighting just worse because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I think it's just like I think we're already past now, or no, we're not because I did anyway. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this film. But also because I was going in expecting just about anything. Like my bar was so low. My bar didn't exist for this movie. And for them to come out and just like really impress me to the point where it's like I do want to see how Eros and you know Pip the troll theme, whatever his name is, like I want to see like here's the thing. It's like I was talking to my brother-in-law about it today. He goes, "So what do you think that's going to tie into? Like as Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain Marvel?" And I'm like, "I think it's just a straight like setup for the Eternals 2." And we both kind of like talked about it a little bit, and like I'm not against an Eternals 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like I liked what I saw out of it. Do I like the way that? And probably the biggest glaring problem with this film is it's very ending, where it's like a weird like a literal Deus ex machina.
Mm-hmm.
God literally comes out of space to like kidnap the Eternals that were left on Earth.
Yeah, there was a trivia in there that I saw that was effectively like the original pitch for the ending was that their minds would still be reset and they would basically be, wiped clean. And it tested poorly with, with audiences. So they kind of changed it to kind of the ending that we currently have. And it's like, yeah, I mean that would be depressing if they save the world and then we lose all of who these characters were.
Yeah.
Which is basically what they were fighting against by the end as well anyway.
Yeah, right. And that totally flies in the face of like the entire purpose of like Thena's storyline, which is like even though she was supposed to be reset, her family decided not to reset her. That who she is was more important than her being this badass warrior. Like that was more important than that. I love that aspect of it.
Yeah. I'm very curious. Yeah. Obviously, I think it's sowing the seeds for characters that are going to start popping up in other things like, Dane's Black Knight character. Obviously the little tease of Blade there, but I mean, it does end with Eternals will return, which strongly suggests that there will be a full-blown sequel of a lot of these characters. I appreciate that they kind of like figured out, because I remember like the first time seeing this and realizing that there was a character like Sprite, I was like, okay, well, how are they going to make that work?
Mm-hmm.
If this character has to like be that age forever in future projects. And I appreciate that the workaround was she's not an Eternal anymore. Like Cersei was able to make her human. And so that actress is going to actually grow up and age, and that's going to be okay in this universe.
Well, something I liked about it is this is something I probably would have changed is it's like the way that it's done is like a little off to me. It's like a weird like the diet like for the kind of I don't know. I was a little thrown off by the kind of like presentation of the offer to Sprite. And I couldn't help but think maybe it could have been a Sprite shows up in that moment and they all kind of look at her weird and she explains that she like there was enough power there for her to become human or something rather than like it being like a weird like I don't know. It felt a little off to me. I felt like maybe they could have workshopped it to be a bit better, but also maybe they tried to and this is the best they got out of it. Because it's kind of like an odd point to kind of just like handle a loose end or a loose thread in kind of like meta narrative of the film about this actor not being able to age.
I mean, I think it works as we understand that like she wants nothing more than to grow and be human and have all the things she has not been able to have for 7,000 years. And
the reverse Peter Pan.
Exactly. Yeah. She like
all she wants to do is
she wants to grow up and and Cersei taps into this cosmic celestial power that like and it's become established now that she has the ability to not only change physical things to other physical things, she can change living beings. So for me it works that she can change an Eternal into a human,
It
to
worked.
kind of
It was
just
just
tie that
yeah.
up.
For me, it worked. It was just felt a bit obtuse, I guess the best way to put it. Like definitely like fits within the narrative. It doesn't break the quote unquote illusion of the film of where it's at, but it just felt like a bit of an obtuse kind of part to um tie up a meta narrative loose end, like I said earlier. So like it works, it does its job, it's cool, like it's fine, whatever. It's just it felt like a rough edge to what was otherwise a pretty clean and smooth circle up until the very end
I
for
guess
me.
I'm not like I didn't get caught in the weeds on it. I look
That's
at
fair.
it and I see like obviously those two are together at the beginning of the movie. They've been together for some time. Like they're still kind of going around together. Kingo left at some point, but they're still together. So I see it as much as anything in that last moment of like a big sister saying, "Hey, little sis, I think I have the ability to give you this thing that you just told me you want. Let's make it happen." And they do. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm absolutely like curious to see where it's going to where we will go from here. Um, and I do like because there's also even elements of like in Eros's like long introduction of things like brother of Thanos. It's like, oh well, like and I think one of them even is like Thanos. Like
Hmm.
it's obviously it is a different character in the comics, but if they're going to incorporate that element of this character into the MCU, now there's kind of another like I want to know more about that that maybe we will get to see from like Eros's perspective on what that Eternal has been doing for X number of years, on
Cool.
Titan and elsewhere.
Real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and pull out my invisible tin hat because we're about to get in some real crazy sauce here.
Oh, goody.
Um, Take for a moment. Thanos is obsessed with this quote unquote equation in his mind, right? Half the universe. We have to make like half the universe has to disappear. How do we do that humanely? How do we make this happen? What is this odd symmetry? I forgot what they named the disease, or the quote unquote disease when they basically have too many memories and they're
The Mad Weary.
mad weary. Take for a moment Thanos, Eternal, part of like the Titan Eternals, what have you, Eros, etc.
Thanos was notably not eternal. I
But
mean,
Eros is
not
an Eternal?
yeah, and that's the weird element. Like in the comics, I guess Thanos is like, a child of deviance or something like that. But they never really delved into that. And the fact that they say like, why didn't you fight why didn't you fight against Thanos? They basically say we were told to only deal with deviants. Like so
Oh, get out
they're
of town. He is straight up a eternal deviant hybrid.
yeah. So
Holy crap. Okay.
they've kind of diverged from the comics, but it is like they've introduced this weird element of like I mean Thanos is all about like not like related to people that are he's not really related to. So it's entirely possible that like like he's the brother of the Mad Titan in the same way that Gamora is a daughter of
Daughter of
Thanos.
Thanos. That makes sense. That's entirely possible. But take for a moment, right? Thanos. Maybe he's the experiment of like, what if we took a little bit of deviant and put in an eternal? Maybe that's the case. Maybe Thanos does it to himself. That's not neither here nor there. Think about it. So he gets mad weary, right? They do the reset, but the reset doesn't work right, like it does with Thena. And instead, it sets him on this idea. He doesn't know why he's driven to this point. What if Thanos is, in his own way, rebelling against the Celestials' plan? Because if he eliminates half the universe, it prevents the birth of Celestials.
Mm-hmm. I
Ergo,
mean,
like, yeah,
arguably it prolongs the birth of Celestials.
yeah, it prolongs the cycle and gives people more time, as it were. But it's not a well thought out plan because they also wiped the guy's mind.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, like it happens. That's like, and before he decided on his plan with the Infinity Gauntlet, he was going like through the galaxy, like wiping out half of populations everywhere he went anyway. So it's like I had the weird thought, like I think this might have been at like 5 in the morning when I was having a bowl of cereal, and I thought about it, and it's like full on tinfoil hat theory here. What if Thanos was suffering from Mad Weary, was reset, didn't go right, suffered Mad Weary again, but his Mad Weary was his genocide against half the universe in a bid to prevent the birth or like prolong the birth of Celestials in his own way of rebelling against the Celestial plan as a whole.
I mean,
but at the same time, mix it with he feels like he's on a pseudo divine mission to do this to save the universe.
I mean, I would throw
that's my
out
tinfoil theory.
the element that that works against that is we get very clear visual cues from Angelina Jolie when she's suffering from that weary, and that like her eyes become clouded. We don't really see that ever in Thanos. Like, he is of clear mind as he is doing all this stuff.
Maybe his version of Mad Weary was turning purple and looking like Grimace from McDonald's.
Sure, Cameron. We'll go with
that.
Maybe
he was like a regular like skinned dude, and then he went purple because he's Mad Weary.
Any final favorite moments from the movie that you want to give a shout out to?
Mad shout out to them like just ham fisting the Black Knight into this movie. In its own weird, awkward ways. But I will say, because of that, I'm happy we get that, because as somebody who was like so into Game of Thrones in my own time and everything, getting a small moment of Richard Madden and Kit Harington on screen together for the first time in years, in ages. Like, these are guys who were close friends in real life. They became friends after being brothers on the show. Like, it's a whole thing. I love that we got just a little bit of a moment of the two of them together. And it made me the Game of Thrones fan inside of me very happy, just to kind of like just get this moment of like these two awesome actors getting to work with each other, for a brief moment.
You're one of those people that went on to IMDb and was like, I find this interesting. Yes.
No, because like I said earlier, I don't find it interesting. Also, I don't go to imdb.com unless it's for this show.
Yeah.
Because I want to see where the heck you're finding the credits that I can't find on Wikipedia. No, like for me, that's like, oh, that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a funny thing.
I
would
appreciate
consider it interesting.
They like, as somebody who knew nothing about like the Dane Whitman character, knew nothing about the Black Knight, I appreciate on a second watch that they do kind of like pepper it throughout the movie. Like, his family crest kind of initially introduced, and she found him that ring on eBay, and even that's like,
yeah,
or has she just had that lying around somewhere and just happened to fall for the long air or whatever. But I appreciate I guess there's like when she's basically like telling him on the phone like, hey, you should make up with your uncle. I guess that's a nod to the character's origins or whatever. But
so the character's origins are essentially Dane Whitman gets a call from his uncle. Turns out his uncle is a villainous Black Knight that fought the Avengers and was on his deathbed after losing to them. And Dane Whitman takes up the mantle of Black Knight in order to redeem his family's honor. That's the OG origin of Black Knight. It's not going to happen this time around because we're talking about, this is like golden age, not well done, copy pasted. Hey, don't copy. Hey, can I copy your homework? Sure, just don't make it look exactly the same. And they make it look exactly the same as just about everybody else's origin story. So
the tease of somebody asking, like when they're back on the Domo, asking Angelina Jolie if it's the ebony blade that she's got, and she's like, no, it's Excalibur. That's obviously another allusion to the ebony blade that we see by the film's end. So like I appreciate that it almost like introducing Hawkeye in the first Thor movie or whatever. It's like, okay, we're setting this character up, and he was set up enough throughout to know that even though I didn't know any of that going into the movie, I knew by the end of it, I'm like, oh, okay, he's clearly a bigger MCU character, which also makes sense for, casting someone of Kit Harington's stature, I guess, in this film. So yeah,
As a
I'll be
side note,
curious
I
to see
also
if he
want to
pops up
yeah.
in Moon Knight or where else, we end up seeing him
I
in the time to come.
I think we're gonna get, and this is my theory, not a superhero team up like the Avengers, but rather, what if we get and this is kind of my thought on this, we get a like Moon Knight, Blade, Black Knight, kind of like mutual crossover tie-in stuff is my thought of what we're gonna get,
Hmm.
because I do not think Black Knight is going to be part of the Celestial story stuff going forward. I think that might be like his character's motivation. He's trying to figure out what the heck happened to his girlfriend. But there has to be some reason why Blade Mahershala Ali shows up at the end of it as a voice rather than anyone else. Also, side note, I want to shout out. I don't think Icarus is dead. I think there's enough of an allusion to Superman, to the idea that he is just chilling inside the sun. And he will probably show up later, naked,
I
butt
mean,
naked,
I
as it
mean,
were.
we see multiple copies of all the Celestials and stuff in Cersei's vision, so I think any of them can come back. Even Gilgamesh, who
Gilgamesh?
gets
Ooh.
cremated, could come back. He might not have the memories or whatever. I don't know how that would get like relayed back to the Mother Forge or whatever it's called.
Well,
Um,
his memories were part of the celestial energy that got sucked up by Crow or Core, whatever.
Crow, yeah,
Crow, yeah. Deviant,
yeah,
main deviant boy.
yeah.
Who was just actually like the entire deviant plotline being a red herring for what was actually happening. So good.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, it would not surprise me if like Ajak or Gilgamesh or any of them like come back somehow in another movie. Because again, you got some quality actors there. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up with the report card, where we give the film a grade from A plus to F. What do you want to give the Eternals here, Cameron?
This is possibly my biggest B plus that I've ever given.
Okay.
Like, I think it definitely balances itself towards A minus or B plus, but like I said, when it's at its height, at its peak, is when it's doing its character drama. Action wise, there's only maybe one or two action scenes that I think like are great. The end fight is like weird in a lot of ways. It's cool in some parts, like when Icarus gets tied down. Like there's certain parts of that are really cool, but other parts of it are just like just really feels like unpolished CGI work.
So you've said that multiple times, and every time I think about that, and I think about this a lot when people talk about this stuff. I'm like, you are all such cynical fucks. Like, this
Oh,
is
come
leaps and
on.
bounds ahead of anything we would have seen 5 years ago. So it's a case of like, I don't know what would have been good CGI for you, because like I think the CGI looks great. I think it is a choice. But I think
I
it is
guess
quality CGI. It's not like it's a Marvel movie. They're not putting nothing into this.
yeah, I guess you're right. It is a choice. It's a stylistic choice, I guess, that I'm not as much of a fan of, I guess.
Mhm. Like I get not
Okay,
liking kind
I feel
of
like
I,
that's a better explanation. But yeah.
I get liking, not liking character, like not liking, the faceless horde of like a Chitauri or something like that. Like it is just kind of like bad guys to be fodder for the good guys rather than like bad guys as characters. That's absolutely, what this is. But I mean, it very much is like these are, otherworldly alien creatures that, are not going to behave like anything we know. So I think they work really well. And it's just kind of one of those, like, when people are like always rag on CG and stuff like it, it's just kind of like, okay, but what would qualify as good CGI for you in that
For me,
regard?
I think what it comes down to is the deviants just always felt it's tough, and this is why I have a hard time explaining it, and why I like that, like why I've been
Why
simpling
bad is shorthand.
shorthand. Yeah, bad. It's here's the thing, because you're right. It is leaps and bounds better than like most of the stuff we would end up getting anywhere else. It's better than what you get in After Effects packages. There you go. But in a more specific sense, I want to say that for me, the deviants felt. I don't know. I don't think it's too alien or too otherworldly. It's just like the texture on the deviants never felt like it matched with the rest of the world.
Hmm.
Um, the deviants never like the deviants just felt like like what I consider great CGI is not necessarily like the quality of the CGI itself, so much as how well done is the CGI being melded into the scene that it's in, right?
Gotcha.
That it
Okay.
does feel like it's part of the scene, like it's still there. Like for
So
example, a great
so
example
like
is
Gollum from Lord of the Rings or something.
Gollum from Lord of the Rings. I would also put up there, in Spider-Man: No Way Home, Doc Ock's arms, even though they're not like the practical puppets that he had in Spider-Man 2, they felt like they were there. They were part of the scene that they were in. When the CGI interacted with the characters and with the environment, it felt like it was there. And I did not feel that about the Deviants outside of the only moments that I actually felt like they were actually in is in Ajax and Gilgamesh's death. When it like you actually see it pierce them, and that I thought was like really good CGI. And in the term that I'm referencing, good versus bad.
Cool.
Um, when when one of the deviants slams through a house, uh, I distinctly remember feeling like the house caved in, and they're like it felt like they were putting the deviant over top of it. Um, and like here's the thing, that's the way that it works. That's how these effects work. And I think that it takes a I don't know what it takes because I certainly don't have it. I would do a much worse job than anybody who ever worked on any of these films ever did. So like take my opinion with like a grain of salt because I'm a talentless hack when it comes to VFX. Um but when like what I look for is those very like for me very intimate and important details um about that. And part of that is you have like CGI will always have to justify to me why it's not practical. I don't care about like your budgetary reasons. Why is it that we're not getting a practical effect here? Is it because you're being lazy and cheap? Or is it because it's too intricate and like it'd be like I guess budgetary wise, fine, that's a good enough reason. If you're like we're trying to build this thing out and it's like gonna be like a like $6 million puppet that's used for like a scene, sure, I get
Mhm.
that. But for me, like you have like for me, as somebody who loves VFX, you have to justify to me why this has to be CGI versus a practical effect.
Mhm.
Or in my preference, practical effects that are enhanced by small like sections of CGI is my preference because you can take a practical effect, do some really solid CGI work to make that practical effect look even better. And I don't like and so when I complain about it, it's in these scenes like I like when I mentioned earlier, when Kingo does his thing where he flips over the deviant and like is underneath it and does his whole thing, that felt like because there's an actor in that movement, whether it's I don't think it was Camille doing it, I think it was probably a stunt actor doing it or a double. Um, that felt kinetic and real and had energy behind it. Um, Icarus soaring through the sky and just doing a thwap punch and sending a deviant off doesn't feel kinetic. It feels like, and I'm going to say this, and of course it's fake because it's a superhero movie, but it feels fake.
Mhm.
Um, like I don't get, and part of the reason why I love movies is that idea of people on film doing kinetic things in animation. When animation moves and it's kinetic and there's energy behind it and you can feel it, and so there's these things feel real, even though we know they're not. I don't get that from a lot of the deviant fights. So for me, that's that knockdown from A minus to B plus because I still think that like the actual like when you actually let the people do the work, this film shines so much.
Mhm. It's I think
Yeah,
it's especially fascinating conversation around this movie because I remember so much of the conversation in the lead up to this movie was like, look at all this stuff that they shot like on locations and in like real practical things. It's like, oh, they definitely did a lot of that stuff too.
yeah,
But then like it is like, oh, but this movie is also CG as fuck. Like
hmm
there's absolutely like CG in probably every frame of the movie or something like that in some degree or fashion. Um it's just one of those things of like, even in these like, hyper realistic movies or something like that, you kind of have to, put that in the back of your mind. Um,
A great example that I want to point out too about like practical meeting CGI is when Cersei has the dagger, the kind of like stone dagger, And as she's handing it back, she turns it into bronze. That moment, and then immediately the cut to it being on like a digital billboard in London. That alone is a great cut. I love the direction work on that, but the actual like that's such a small thing, but to me that's so great is because you see the detail of the bronze like transformation to it, the texture of it change, like it does such a great job of conveying this is a full-on transformation of this knife. And I love that aspect of it. And so when CGI works like that, I like it a lot. But like I said, when there's no kinetic space to it, when there's just when it's just Icarus doing a random Superman punch to knock off the wing of a deviant to cause it to barrel downwards, like I don't feel that.
You don't like pixels fighting pixels. Got it.
I mean, when I'm watching a movie and it's not an animated movie, no.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, and that's not a, like, I'm not making a judgment call there. I'm just saying, like, that's kind of like a simplified version of what you're describing, and the, especially that like desire for there to be a more practical element to those characters or to the deviants or whatever the case may be.
Know who's in great shape who could probably do some solid wire work? Richard Madden.
Yeah. And I'm sure he did some wire work in this, and it's probably like that's the other thing is like so much CGI is just erasing those elements of it that we don't even like that's just become such a staple that we just kind of expect that to be the case.
Yeah.
Anyway, I fall, I'd probably fall as a B is where I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think again, great ensemble. I think it definitely is just such a unique beast in the MCU that like going in and wanting to see kind of the next chapter of this, it's weird seeing this entirely side story kind of thing that doesn't have any of those other characters that you love or whatever. Not a bad thing at all, but just, you know, a different experience.
As the Marvel movie that came out after Black Widow.
Yes.
Like back to back very odd movies in like the
well, actually this one would have been after Shang-Chi.
Oh, was this someone? Okay,
yeah,
never mind that.
Shang-Chi was in between the two.
Shang-Chi works better, I think, as far as being part of like the Marvel film house, but yeah, these two, like Black Widow being like a period piece set just a couple years, like a little bit before Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the flip side of that, you get before Infinity War. Yeah, sorry. And then on the flip side of that, you have this film just being like just such a side chapter to everything else, like you mentioned. Is like, it's an interesting 2021 was an interesting year for Marvel movies. That is for sure.
Yeah, making up for 2020 having none. Extra credit of the suggestions if you like this. You have Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings. You have Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, and Black Widow. Extracurriculars, you watch anything else on Disney Plus? Did you ever get caught up with Book of Boba Fett?
No, I have not been. I've been scrambling to catch up with just about anything and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I came home and the first thing I ended up doing was finishing The Witcher season 2. On Netflix, which is not part of this show. No, I really enjoy. I'm still trying to catch up to everything. It's just I'm gonna need to like just take a night where I'm take a Saturday night, watch like a bunch of Book of Boba Fett, watch a bunch of other stuff, and just try to catch up on everything. So
yeah, I have been keeping up with the Book of Boba Fett. It's very much going the path I kind of have expected from day one of like it's a very slow paced story. And it's interesting. It has, it has some strong highlights. It's interesting you mentioned Witcher season 2, because I went to a different Netflix series and I basically binged Cobra Kai season 4 over the course of like a night or two when I got back from Disneyland. So that is the other thing that I've watched recently. But yeah. That is going to do it for this episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cameron, for joining me to talk about Eternals here. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot on Twitter. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, keep an eye out for our, we just put out our Game of the Year podcast. It was an absolute banger. We had a great time recording it. And if you look closely, you might be able to tell. Did we film it over 2 separate days? Maybe. You'll have to watch and
Yeah.
see.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I say multiple times throughout there that we're filming it over 2 separate days, but yes.
I know that, Trevor, but they don't know that yet.
Okay, okay.
This is the hook to get them to come watch it.
Gotcha.
That's
the
YouTube,
hook, not
on YouTube,
not
on youtube.com/thatnerdy-site.
not come see what our game of the year is. It's the hook is come see whether or not we recorded over 2 different nights. Come see if our costumes change midway through the episode.
That was the joke. That was the humor of it, right? Yeah. Like, yeah, no, it's we had a great time doing it. It's always a great time doing game of the year, because I always realize I played way more games than I thought I did. Just about every year, I'm like, I don't think I played that many games. Oh no, I played a lot of games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah, we had a great time doing it. There's some surprises, but overall, just a great time, especially since we did that right before we all traveled to Disneyland.
Yeah,
IRL. I can't wait to sit down and talk about our trip to Disneyland. So prepare for that episode, which you can also watch over at that youtube.com/thatnerdy-site.
Yeah. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and I will kind of echo that shout out of this coming that we basically took last week off of that Nerdy Site show in part to kind of let that Game of the Year episode breathe a little bit, but also in part because we'd all just come back from a great fun road trip over to Disneyland. So we're going to try and sit down this weekend and kind of reminisce on all of our favorite memories and stuff from our Disney trip. That'll be hopefully me, Cam, Frank, and Logan. So stay tuned for that this coming Monday as that next episode of That Nerdy Site show. In addition to that, I will also shout out, as I did earlier in the episode, That Bond show, our Bond watch along podcast with me and Logan watching through every Bond movie. We're going to we're recording things about a month ahead of schedule, so as we're about to go into like this next episode that we're doing, that's another one that we're going to hopefully bring Cam and Frank in for, because they specifically want to talk about some Live and Let Die. So but this coming weekend, basically the day after this episode goes live, you can see mine and Logan's thoughts on Thunderball after the kind of the maybe highs of Goldfinger the prior week. So come check that out. That is a YouTube only show, so you can go catch that at youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Every Saturday is when new episodes of that go live. So go check that out if you are a Bond fan. It's kind of like this show, but for Bond. And Logan hosts it instead of me. So yeah, that is going to do it. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Ring that bell, as Cameron is mouthing. Yeah, thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other. Class dismissed.